Alright folks, how you doing? We're going to be going over a quick how-to on dungeoning, using Dungeon Dwellers here. And here we have our 4 main archetypes that we will need inside this dungeon. We got our tank over here to our left. Yay! We got 1 healer, which is right there. And we got 2 DPS. And one's not moving at all, just looking off stoically. Alright, now for any dungeon you have to have this combo currently. I need 1 tank to handle most of your taunting, most of your aggro on your bosses and all that stuff. You need 1 healer to keep the group up, and you need 2 DPS to face off on whatever DPS races that you have. Now your DPS's ranges has 2 different types as well. Typically you have your melee and you have your range. Your range can include magicka, or it can include any type of bow user as well. Melee can yes, and your melee can also include usually 2-hander, dual wield, and a variety of magicka abilities that you may have on top of that. First, let's talk to the tank here and see what do you do here. So we're going to talk to Shinrabi here. And Shinrabi, can you link some of your gear, please? As somebody tries to photobomb the link here. Alright, and Sean, do you want to explain what you're using this for? You're using Hissbark, Bloodspawn's Visage, and Memento of the Footman.
Yeah, the Hissbark has, bonus defenses, and it gives you a dodge chance when you're blocking, which is really nice to have.
Fuck her right in the pussy.
The Bloodspawn's Visage has a chance to, has a chance to give you ultimate and to give you bonus defense, and Memento of the Footman increases your block, and of course gives you a boost to your defense. A lot of nice stuff. Just
Okay, and are you you're a evasion tank, correct?
Yes, for the most part, evasion tank.
All right, and what is the difference between an evasion tank and a mitigation tank?
An evasion tank can take hits, but also focuses on just not taking those hits in the first place. Mitigation tank focuses on getting as beefy as possible, and just, basically having maximum mitigation.
Absorb versus dodge.
Yeah, absorb versus dodge is the gist of it.
Alright, and what's the hardest fight that you have done that you've been using with the mitigation?
Well, with dodge tank, hardest fight I've done is Vet DSA. Well, actually...
Sanctum.
Sanctum, yeah. Sanctum.
I'll be answering everyone's questions.
Actually, yeah, Sanctum's quite a bit harder with the dodge tank than it is with the mitigation tank, I think, so.
Alright, and next healer, Via. Could you link what you have?
Sure, so I have a 5 set of the healer, and in martial knowledge I have 4 pieces. And then I have 2 resto staves. And it's all about keeping my magicka up and having lots of it.
Okay. And typically when you do your Templar healer, right? Do you also use Certain Board? Or do you use mainly Restoration Staff?
I use double resto staffs because the other things that I can do for the group, I do have a couple of damage spells, but I use mostly my Templar skills to regen magic, to help others regen their stamina.
Alright, and in addition to that, see that thing there? What do you use to keep your magicka up? Do you use things like, sorry about that, spell symmetry, or do you typically use more on pots and spell mitigate or magicka cost mitigation?
Well, my skills, my points, my champion points, and for spells I use the channeled focus. which increases armor and spell resistance and recovers magicka. And then I use my resto staff to get it back to, of course, and just doing damage while I do the heavy hits with it.
And now, Jin, you're a typical Nightblade using two dual wield and bow. So what gear do you currently use?
Weapon damage, and then more weapon damage.
So
With
using
a little bit more weapon damage.
yes. Okay, so 3x Ashen Grip, 5x Hudding's Rage, 3x Two Fang, and 1x Master Dagger. And typically, what do you do with this? How do you keep your stamina recovery up and all that stuff too?
Well, at the moment, I have my jewelry enchanted with reduced stamina costs. I don't really like it, but you can use Evil Hunter if you're fighting anything undead or Daedra, or you can just hit him with a heavy attack.
And finally, the last person on our list here, who is the one who is bombing most of us and looking away right now, is Yoda said here. And Yoda, what are you using today?
Stark stuff for fun.
Your equipment.
Seducer and Soulshine and Adroitness. I'll link you.
Mm-hmm.
There you
All right. So how much are you using in the Adroitness?
go. Just a necklace. I have two Soulshine rings, the Narrative set, and then Seducer. And then I duel with Resto Destro, so if I need to get into a situation where the healer is under difficulty, or the healer gets CC'd or something, I can jump into Resto and get the healer up so we don't die. But mainly, I am a single target DPS. I use Lightning Flood for AoE, but it's mostly just a burn build, a Crushing Shock, and Crystal Frags build, really.
Alright.
But for a VR7, this dude put out some serious damage.
Okay. Now I'm going to be getting to builds a little bit later with a different series as well, going over specifically tanks, healers, and DPS as well. But just for folks at home here, Sean, can you give me one thing that you do as a tank when you first go into a dungeon? Or what's your main job, at least?
I usually throw out something like Path of Darkness or Calthrops, CC all the ads in the area, get them aggro to me. Just
Alright, and on bosses?
Bosses, hold them if they have something like a AoE cone or something in front of them that you don't want your DPS and healer getting hit by. You face the boss away and just so it basically means you turn them so that AoE won't hit your guys, and then keep them taunted, keep them debuffed. Just make sure that everything's under control, because it's your job to control things.
Okay. And finally, what's a good stat or attribute mark to get for your attributes when you're trying to tank? Should it be over a certain amount, over 25k, or does it not really matter because your mitigation's high enough that you could take it at any levels?
Well, you want to go for over 25k, but 30k is definitely more recommended.
That also depends on the group too, though.
It does depend on the group. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, if you're relying on yourself to basically self-sustain and keep yourself, like a rock, you might want a little bit more in health just so you can have that bigger pool. Yeah.
If you have sick heals, you don't really need that much health. If your heals are a little bit, weak, then you want to make sure that your mitigation and health is up.
Mm-hmm. And now, Via, you have about 21k health. That's usually typical. That's typical for what I see for most healers. What's your other stats like as well? What do you look for like, let's say, what's your maximum magicka most times?
Right now it is 23, 114, and recovery is 1324.
Okay.
But I do have a lot of spell critical for the big heals, because that'll pretty much fill up half a person's life for the most part.
Mm-hmm. How do you typically try to heal? Do you try tossing out heals all the time, or do you just try to keep them up as you see, and then DPS off when they aren't so bad?
Well, my opening is always combat prayer, and I try and keep that up because it helps the group do damage, and I try, if people are grouped up, to just throw down healing springs sort of as a preventative, because you can sit in there and if you get hit, then you already have a heal going. For my emergency, when I see people really going down, it's Breath of Life. That's typically what I do. And if we're in a situation where you have to do a lot of movement, I will typically throw down a purifying ritual so that people can move to it if they
in on the action.
They're healing up. So that's typically what I do.
And now, do you usually heal groups like this that are just not paying attention at all and getting themselves in trouble?
This group is the easiest group to heal. These three, because they're so good. I mean, they don't take a lot of damage, and so when I'm with these three, I tend to probably do more damage myself, and like when we do Dragonstar Arena, throw out the Jesus Beam and stuff like that a lot more. That's the only thing, though. The Jesus Beam is really fun, but I have to be ready to roll if I've started it and somebody starts going down quickly, and I've let people die when I get too enthusiastic about using my Jesus Beam.
Don't go down on Jesus.
I know.
Alright, and now for our two DPS here. Take a look at both of your health here. 14 and 17 seem to be your markers on this. What do you usually recommend when you...
We're a little busy. Can you just give a second?
Okay. Let's just look over here to the left.
Okay, I'm good. Sorry, what was that?
What do you usually look for if you're a newbie DPS? You've never done it before. Do you think do you think that most people can survive with 17 or 14k, or is it a little bit low?
Hell no.
So what's a good marker for a new player to go for?
I think honestly, any new player that's going to come into the game and looking to get into dungeons and want to learn them, everyone needs 20k health just around the bat. You're going to take a little bit longer because you're going to sacrifice some things. You're not going to have the amount of DPS to have bosses burnt. But the thing is, you're not going to be burning bosses anyways, because you have to learn how the bosses work. If you're in a situation where you've never done it before, aim for at least 20k around the board. Everyone having that. Basically, what that does is it keeps you from being one hit by a lot of these boss mechanics, because some of these bosses are pretty cheap. Sometimes they come and they'll do something that you didn't know they were coming with, and they'll hit you for 18k. For us, we know it's coming. We've done these dungeons thousands of times, so we can tell you what's coming from when. We know how to get out of the way. If you don't, it's going to get frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Now, whose fault is it if you stand in the red and die?
Healers.
Yes. You should always be able to stand in the red and stay alive, because the healer has great heals, right?
No, I mean, that's really the first rule of dungeons. I mean, our guild is pretty simple. We have 2 rules: don't stand in red and don't be a dick. So, it comes down to just being situationally aware. This game is different than a lot of other MMOs because there's a lot of things happening around you at all times. So you kind of have to be situationally aware. You have to know, mobs will flank you. They will come and hit you from behind. Like I was just showing you how that works with Wave a little while ago, hitting it from behind. It's one of those things, He's got to be aware.
All right, and what do you think the biggest skills that you need as a DPS? Animation canceling, I know, is one. Most people have to learn to do that pretty early on.
It depends on your class, really. I mean, not even beyond your class. You have to. What kind of DPS do you want to do? You know, if you're going to be a ranged bow DPS, then you need to know how to cancel heavy attacks with Venom Arrow and know the difference between Magnum Shot and what to use when that volley sucks. And you know, you have to learn your skills, and you're gonna have to know what class skills work with what weapons you use. Really, there's no what skills you have. I mean, the only thing that's universal is situational awareness. You know, knowing what's going to happen when and when not to stand in big red circles. That's really the only thing it comes down to.
Well, yeah, but how do you put it?
Because my Sork and my DK, for instance, they're both magical DPS, but they play completely fucking differently. Like, they're completely different characters. So, like, to say what skill could you use independently of both of those?
No.
Being aware, you know?
I'm talking more like situational awareness is one. Animation cancel, you have to almost use in every DPS, of course. But what else? What other things do you think would help? I usually find that sitting back and watching a boss usually helps you learn the mechanics first off, especially if you've never seen them before. You know, certain other things like being good at dodge rolling is really helpful, especially if you're going to be a melee DPS, knowing when to get out, or you get yourself out of there and all that.
You're going to dodge roll if you have this.
Not everyone can be Blinky.
Not everyone can be Blinky.
You know?
Yeah, you just follow force.
Yeah, I can tell you what you need to do. Just for everybody. Healer, tank, anybody, it doesn't matter. Interrupt.
Yeah, there's something, yeah, definitely, yeah. No, yeah,
Definitely.
And that's also a really good point. Know the cues. Know what it means when a boss or a mob has a red coming off of them, and when they have yellow coming off of them. Know what that means. You know, if you see a mob have yellow lines coming off of them, then that means that they're about to hit you with a heavy attack. If you see them with a channel that has red coming off of them, that means you can interrupt, and it's about to kill you. You know, for like a Sork, know that your crystal frags, when your hands are glowing purple, you have a basically free insta cast of crystal frag. Know your character and know the signs around you.
And another question: should you ever do this in first person?
If you want to, go ahead. I mean, I would never want PvP in first person, to be honest with you. I mean, I think you can, if you get to a point, if you can probably run any dungeon once you get to know it in first person. Make it a little disconcerting, but I don't think you could really PvP effectively in first person. I just don't think that can happen.
That pretty much covers our quick introduction to this as well. Probably do a few series a little bit later regarding specifically DPS builds, healer builds, and tank builds as well, going in more depth on some of that stuff. But I hope you guys have enjoyed taking a look at Dungeon Dwellers. You can find our site. I'll put a link down in the actual comments below here so people can find that as well. And we will have additional stuff up there as well with more examples and dungeons as well, so you know some of those cues to look for as these guys spam their hearts out.